My name is Charlie Phillips. I've been recognized as a archivist, which over the last 50 years, I've documented our life from an Afro-Caribbean point of view, which has been left out of the mainstream history. But now we're coming up to the seventh generation. I'm so glad that this generation has found a lot of interest in my work. You know, I'm jack of all trades, as they call me, master of none. I try to be an opera singer. I try to be a naval architect. Everybody laughed me down, and I ended up being a photographer and a master chef. Well, my story began moving to England. I arrived in England on the 18th of August, 1956, 3:30 in Liverpool. Here's a guy just come from the West Indies. This was the style we brought over, the zoot suit. As you can see, and if you look at some of the Windrush generation photographs, we didn't come as any desperate, poor immigrants. Some of us might be, yeah? But they took the best of our talent out, and they had to do menial jobs. But the reason I like this photograph because what is now British fashion, yeah? It's to our contribution, because in the 50s and 60s, you could have only got black, gray, or navy blue. You can look at some of the old Windrush photographs. They were well attired.
I've got a personal obsession with film. The romance of photography, I think, comes from film. My name's Eddie Otchere. I am a photographer, curator, and educator, and I have been Charlie Phillips's archivist for something like a decade now. I think our first working day together, myself and Charlie, was an afternoon where I went round to his house and I filmed everything on his wall, and I sat down with him in his living room and he spoke about his life and unpacked this amazing story of growing up in the 60s. And I remember I was left with this quote from him, and he said, "You know what, Eddie, I've been shouting from the 60s. I've been on the front line in the Paris Commune. I've been on the front line in the Notting Hill riots. I've been shouting from the 60s. And it was with that story that I could look at all the materials in his house and see it all as being a symbol, a collection of one man's belief in this life. And he lived his life through photography.
When we first came here, when I came here, we didn't have a welcoming committee, yeah? No provision was made for us from there, and yet we're part of the empire. Yeah, this was when Notting Hill Gate was a ghetto. Now it's gentrified, and how some of our folks got accommodation was through that notorious landlord called Rackman. Well, Rackman, he was good and he was bad, because he was the only one who provided accommodation. This was the era when you'd see signs, no blacks, no Irish, no, yeah. So we had to fend for ourselves. So this is why most of the accommodation got overcrowded. We're a family of four, which I did, lived in one room, yeah? One room, yeah? And I'd have a folding bed in one side, and the mother and dad would share a double bed. How I got into photography, that's $1 million question, yeah? At the time, between 1956 and 1969, there was a Cold War going on. Yeah? So we used to have black American GIs, yeah, who used to come into Notting Hill or Brixton, the black one, because, yeah, in those days we weren't welcome for entertainment. We couldn't go to the Lyceum or the Empire Ballroom or so we had to make our own entertainment in some of the illegal clubs, which is known as shebeens, or private parties.
Blues dance.
And blues dance, that's how it originated. And this is a part of the history that hasn't been documented as well. And anyway, the Afro-American GIs, they used to come to our parties, and they would bring some of their own records from the base, and they'd bring cigarettes. And how I got into photography is A GI got legless one night, couldn't go back to his base, so he pawned the camera out to my dad for 15 shillings. And I started to fiddle around this camera, and one day I went to Boots Chemist and I saw a little book, Do It Yourself Photography. Now in the days when I give talks, you know, I tell people I didn't go to no art school, I didn't serve my apprentice. I learned my work from a book called 3 and 6 from Boots Chemist, Johnson's book, Do It Yourself Photography, and I've still got it.
He started with a Kodak Retina, which is like the startup camera for every young person in the 1950s. It's a beautiful camera, it's simple as. It's got a beautiful, it really has a beautiful viewfinder. Yeah, Charlie comes from a certain school of photography. The school of photography where when you're a young man, you'd go down to the chemist and get a bottle of bromide. And then you'd go into your bathroom and make prints and sell them to your schoolmates on a 5x7 and larger. So you realise he's basically a very good amateur photographer. But this is where photography throws art on its head. You're only as good as the camera you got, and you are the photographer in that documentation process, capturing something that no one else has captured. It's as simple as that. No one has been photographing Afro-Caribbean funerals in West London since the 1950s, except Charlie Phillips.
A lot of us were well skilled and talented, but we had to end up doing menial jobs. Why don't you get a job on London Transport, or with the hospital services, or with the post office? They just see you at a certain level.
I think Charlie's investment in the community was being there for the community week in, week out with a camera, you know. And at the time, I believe he was shooting on a Leica and a medium format camera as well, a square camera. And they rendered some of the most beautiful images of Notting Hill. Because every week, week in, week out, he'd photograph the community, bump into them on the street. You see a flaneur of Notting Hill with a camera, just drifting through, catching each shot of everyone in the community.
This is one of my iconic shots. Yeah, and it was the first carnival in the street. It's about 1965-64, the first street carnival. Marky, there was other carnivals before, but small scale in St. Pancras Town Hall. I was in my darkroom printing, and my darkroom was up the road, you know, and I heard all this commotion. So I thought there was a riot. I came out, it was just steel band and people on the street getting together. It was a bank holiday Monday. You know, the streets were supposed to be quiet and peaceful, but it was in Tavistock Square. And I can say I was there. This is another carnival, same year. That's on the street, that's a street carnival, you know. After 60 years, our carnival should be one of the best carnivals. It should be rated amongst the top 10 carnival. We've become a laughing stock. We have become a laughing stock when a carnival finishes at 6 o'clock in the evening, yeah? It's not supposed to happen. Carnival is part of British culture, whether you like it or not, because we're celebrating our emancipation. And when you have 2 million people coming out, singing and dancing, let's be merry, let's be joyful. What they're trying to say, yeah, no hard feelings, we're still here, come and enjoy it. Yet the institutions, yeah, and as taxpayers, yeah, can't accept it. This is about 1967, 68, you know, before the riots. Yeah, I used to walk with my camera and document. It was, yeah, as I said, it was for my own personal use, hoping that when we go back to Jamaica, we could show what life was like in the mother country. One of the things you can see in a lot of my photographs, or some of my photographs, there's a lot of white women involved. Yeah. They've been left out of our history as well, yeah? Because some of the white women who used to take sides defended us when you like. And I remember I got attacked by some teddy boys, and this white woman came, "You leave that local college chap alone. We've got sons as well," you know? And you know, and they've been left out of history. I got some pictures outside the Southbank too, with me and Art Blakey, and you see I lost a lot of those photographs. I got pictures here with Dave Brubeck. In downstairs I got I was with Thelonious Monk. The last jazz concert I saw here was Ella Fitzgerald and the Count Basie Orchestra. That could have been about 1974. Yeah, but that one with the Duke Ellington with Ella, I was there. I used to sneak in. One of the times I got to hear with Humphrey Lyttelton by carrying his trumpet case.
The Charlie Phillips archive began sometime in 2015. We had the opportunity to get some funding together to be able to take out from underneath his bed his negatives, his contact sheets, his prints, and put them into, you know, archival bags, archival boxes, archival contact sheets, and start to digitize everything, or at least digitize everything from the point of view of digitizing contact sheets, because that way we could see the context of Charlie's images. And once we started to sort of unravel, we realized that the story is much bigger than Charlie Phillips. We realized that the archive was essentially an archive about the community of Notting Hill.
It's 50 years too late, because when I showed my stuff around years ago, they couldn't believe I took it, or they couldn't believe a person of color was capable of taking photos. They couldn't believe a person of, and they still can't believe it, you know? So what happens, it becomes very political, because I have to put a stop to it. Fortunately, we're coming up to the 7th generation who still hasn't been given a proper platform to tell our side of the story. It hasn't been told from a grassroots level. Yeah? So this is what we're trying to do.
This is one of the Charlie's classic sort of portraits underneath the flyover on Portobello Road. And that really sums up the beauty of Charlie's work, this community documentarian taking beautiful portraits of the community. And they are beautiful subjects in context. He feels that every image he takes is important, whether it's a funeral, a wedding, or just portraits in the back garden. He takes on a certain sense of, I must record my community, I must document.
What I'm trying to do now is to correct the history, or tell our side of the stories.